Well, good afternoon. Yeah, sometimes you just introduce a sound or a vibration and it can take you someplace else, right? Take you way back, yeah? And all of our ancestors had ways of getting our attention. Sometimes the birds get our attention, they squawk, or the wind will come in that way. And I just want us to imagine and maybe remember that at one time in all of our families, one time in our culture, we were whole, we were balanced, we were healed, we were at peace. And maybe that was one time, a long time ago, thousands of years ago, or maybe it was Sunday afternoon at your house, you know? Because you can still bring the essence of that back, and that's what we attempt to do. You can create it for a moment, you know? You can create it for a weekend, and maybe, you know, as a man, I can commit to it for a lifetime. I can leave some of those things behind that kind of, you know, have hurt our people. And you know, within this tradition that we carry, it's important to recognize that there were all the things that are necessary in order for healing and well-balance we have within each of our cultures. And some of our ancestors wrote this down in what we call códices in ancient writings. When the newcomers came, when the conquistadores came, they attempted to destroy all the books and all the written language of that instruction. But what they forgot is the elders keep it inside here. And so they kept telling the story. So we're going to, today, I'm real privileged to have three friends of mine, compadres, colleagues, just like brothers and like sons or like nephews, and depending on what age. They're going to be here today to share different aspects of because, you know, we can take all the beautiful traditions and music and dance, but if you get a, you know, 15-year-old, you know, bald head, tattooed down, knucklehead, and, you know, say, shit, my PO sent me here, you know, just shine my shit so I can get out of here because I don't believe in nothing. What do you do with that youngster? What do you do with a mother that, you know, has 4 kids and her husband's in prison or just got deported? And what do you do with that one? What do you do with a young girl that, you know, has just been raped and she's so ashamed that she can't go tell her dad or her mom? What do you do with a 15-year-old young man that just found out he's a father? And somewhere in his spirit, he wants to be a good father. But he's got the legacy of so many issues in his life that he doesn't even know what good father means. But someplace in his spirit, he knows this child is on the way. And he wants to do well, but where does he go to and where does he turn? Because they've already labeled him. And so I'm very privileged today to introduce to you that young man that we met long, long time ago. He's not 15 or 16 no more. Right? He came to a program in which Bobby and I were running and for teen fathers, and he stuck around. He didn't want to go leave, so he stayed around so long we had to hire him. You know, you know, and now he's my nephew. You know, he's our nephew, and so I want to give you know, really, he's been doing this work for a lot of years and does some really beautiful work about helping community and connecting that way. And so I want to first introduce Mr. Osvaldo Cruz.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to come down here because I feel disconnected speaking from way up there. And first to say that thank you for the introduction, Jerry. And I was hoping to say, he's not going to refer to me, is he? But it's part of the work that I do. Osvaldo Cruz, better known in the community as Ozzie. And part of what Jerry was mentioning to you was that I was a teen father. Found out I was going to be a father at the age of 15. And so in the work that I do, I work at an elementary school, I work at a middle school, or I work at a high school, I work with lots of families, but primarily within the Latino community, working with young boys. And a lot of what I see is a lot of referrals from teachers saying, we need help, this young boy can't stay still, he needs a mentor, he needs a guide. but very often are there the resources to be able to work with these young men. You're seeing a lot of referrals that say, we believe that he's emotionally disturbed, is lacking a father figure. And so what we try to do, based on the work and a lot of the mentorship that I've received through Bobby and through Jerry, is to be able to address those issues, but more than anything, create a space where individuals feel welcome, where they feel safe, where they feel acknowledged. And some of you that had the privilege to sit in our Círculo yesterday, our healing circle, got to experience a little bit about that, about the richness, the feeling welcome, that you have a place, that you have a space where you can create dialogue, where you can address some of these issues. And so what we do through our work is we bring in some of that cultural richness, in that there are things within our cultura, within our culture, that allow us to process some of these struggles that we're going through, some of the issues that we're dealing with. And so one particular program that we've been able to incorporate is called the Joven Noble. It's the noble young man, in which we talk about what is the significance of being a man of palabra, or a young man of word, and how that has ties to our cultural roots, in that there's ways in which men carry themselves when there are women present, how through the different stages of life you carry yourself in a different way, that there are different expectations. But we do that in a way in which we get to provide a rites of passage, a way in which we acknowledge individuals to say that, mijo, now that you're 12, you carry yourself in a different way. Mija, now that you're 15, not only we're going to do the quinceañera, and we're going to the vals de sorpresa, and we're going to get a limo for you, but we're going to say, now that you're becoming a young woman, we're going to help you and guide you. So a lot of the work that we do is based on the philosophy that men need other men to help them and guide them, to heal them and to nurture them, the same way that women do. And so we provide that venue, and the work that we do is that we do círculos. Yes, we do have programs. Yes, we do have evidence-based curriculums. Yes, there is a learning plan. But aside from all of those lessons that we provide, whether it's a 10-week curriculum or 20-week curriculum, we then say, now that you've gone through this process, now that you've been introduced to these concepts, this philosophy, is we want to provide you with the space. In case we didn't address something that you're going through in those 10 sessions, 20 sessions, we want you to know that there's a place where you can come, we can create dialogue, we can have conversation. But most importantly, when you're ready, there'll be a space here for you to do that. And we also recognize that some of us that are doing this work, because we've been doing it for such a long time, if we don't take care of ourselves, that sometimes we carry some of those toxins, that sometimes those things burden us or hold us down. And so in doing this work, we also recognize that we need to have a place, that those of us that are doing this work need to have a place where we can come together to be able to shed some of those burdens, or what we call cargas, those things that hold you back. And so what we do in this mental health work is that we want to be able to provide that healing space for the young men and the young women that we work with. And that can be done in the form of a círculo where we incorporate music, we incorporate drums, but most importantly of all, it's also guided by somebody who knows the process. We're not just meeting to meet, we're not just meeting to sit and share stories, but more importantly, it's being guided by somebody that can allow healing to occur. And so oftentimes that is usually a maestro or an elder. And so what I've been able to do at the schools that I'm working with, because I work at 3 different schools, but they're feeder schools. So that means that whoever I deal with in elementary level and they're ready to graduate to move on to middle school, guess what? They'll see me next door. And when they're ready to move on, whether they're going to culminate or not, because the system is going to push them forward, I'll see you in high school. Unfortunately, systems are not supporting our efforts. We're not receiving the funding that we need to be able to continue to do this work. I work within LA Unified, and my position is coming to an end. And so teachers are saying, well, who's going to look after our boys? Well, first and foremost, they're no longer boys, now they're young men, because now we're talking about 4 years later. And if I'm not there, if programs are not there, if the community is not there to respond, to advocate for these types of programs, then those guides will not be there. And so what we're saying, what the community's response is saying is, how do we advocate for positions, for programs such as the ones that we work with, to be able to come into the schools, and then how do we sustain that funding? And so it's important for us to be able to tell the community that we need them to help us in the effort, to help us to deal with these young boys and these young men. Story of a case that I helped with just yesterday. This young boy, 5th grader, was referred to me because the teacher says that he's how was the referral written? He was he was feeling very angry and felt that one of us needed to address this with this young man. He was exhibiting anger. And so, okay, Ozzie, we need you to go and talk to this young man because he's been in your group and we feel that you've connected with him. And so can you address this issue with him? I said, sure. And so I pulled the young man out and I said, how you doing? Good to see you. Haven't seen you in a few weeks. What's going on? And so the young boy begins to break down. He begins to cry. And I said, you know, mijo, it's okay. Suéltalo, let it out, desahógate. Be able to process that. And when you're ready, after you take a few deep breaths, then we'll talk about what's going on with you and how I can help you. Well, it just so happened that this young boy had received this perrito, this dog, this stuffed animal, and they're getting ready to culminate and to move on to middle school. And so he had everybody sign this thing and says, good luck, congratulations, mijo. And then somebody got a hold of that and then tagged it up, right? They graffitied on it. And so this young man felt that what was done to him, that this wrong that was caused to him was significant enough to affect him to the point where now, because he didn't have the skills, he didn't have the techniques, the strategies to deal with this anger, that he was going to rip his paperwork, that he was going to lash out on his peers, that he was going to disrespect his teacher. And just by sitting with him and taking him back and refocusing him about the teachings that we talked about, because within our culture exist those teachings to be able to deal with anger management, to be able to deal with relationships. And so I took him back to one of the teachings, and one of the traditional teachings we talk about how do you deal with your anger, and that it's okay to be angry. What we're concerned about is what you do with that anger. And so to be able to acknowledge that to him and allow him to process, allow him to grieve, to cry over that wrong that was done to him, and then be able to say, mijo, remember about what we talked about what those cultural teachings tell us about when somebody hurts us and does an injustice against us, how we need to be able to breathe, we need to be able to focus. And unless those programs were there, unless that funding was there to be able to address these issues, then who would? Because the reality is he's preparing himself to go on to middle school. And what needs to be set in place is a transitional program that helps him to deal with some of those things. Because he's going to be faced with a lot worse once he gets to middle school. Because I know the middle school that he's going to, because I work there. The unfortunate thing is that when we provide services and we provide programs that are specific to 10 weeks or to 20 weeks, is that when we're trying to gauge how do we measure success, right? So we have a measuring tool, we have a pre-test, a post-test, we follow fidelity guidelines. The reality in how we measure success, or at least how I like to measure success, is the next time that this young man, this young boy gets pissed off, mad, upset, is he going to think about how he can resolve this problem in a different way? Before he puts himself in a predicament, is he now going to be better equipped to handle this problem? And so unless we create programs that allow us to exist for 10 years, 20 years, so that we are able to nurture those relationships and to help guide these individuals across that bridge, then really what we're doing is we're using a Band-Aid approach. And so what I'm saying to you all and to all of us here is that this work needs to continue, that we need to be able to incorporate these cultural teachings that are specific to some of these young men. Because believe me, the language that I use with young men, with some of the young Latino men that I work with, they'll catch on to some of those phrases and be like, yeah, Mr. Cruz, you know what I'm talking about. The fact that, the way that I dress or the way that I look resonates with them. And so I don't have all the answers for all of the youth that I work with. However, I've got resources. I've got people that I can go to. And so what we're saying is to support us in the work that we do, acknowledge that there are cultural teachings that are significant to the populations that we're working with, and that even through storytelling, we can create healing. Thank you.
So we begin to understand that you know, the system doesn't know how to deal with generational hurt. And we see little boys. We see little boys that are angry. They're so angry they can't sit still. You know, they sit in classrooms in which you see them and their legs going, right? Their legs going like this. Tomás, stop moving. Okay, teacher, sorry. And then, stop moving. We're going to give you a timeout. Okay, sorry. Stop it. Don't be looking at me. Sure. I'll kick your ass. It's him. It's not me. I ain't doing it. He ain't looking. All right, sorry. Teacher, I gotta go to the bathroom. And what our ancestors understood, what my grandma understood, is that when you're not right, it affects you physically, it affects you emotionally, it stops you from thinking. You can't think, you can't retain, you can't process. I don't care if they do goal setting with you and toda la fregada. And spirit, it breaks your spirit. In our culture, there's something called susto. Susto, if you look at translated, it means being scared, but it really means being so frightened you're frozen. Que no puedes mover, you can't move. And the medicine people will say when you are in so much trauma that your spirit will go up and look at you from up there, down there. It's not a dysfunctional thing. It's the ancestors are pulling your spirit so it doesn't get broken. And when the danger's gone, they bring it back. And then you spend the rest of your life trying to repair it. And what Ozzie was talking about is, where do you go for that repair? Where do you go that somebody that can, the young people say, do you feel me? Right? So we understand the susto, we understand the pain, we know about trauma. We've gone through it for generations, you know. But really, you know, I remember when my dad died when I was 13, you know, it was like, now where do I go? Now what do I do? And they taught me as a boy to suck it up, to, you know, don't be crying, nothing, and I had no place to go. Right? And you look, and in the communities, there's guys there, but they don't have the right teachings. They got the false teachings. And so I really want to acknowledge my compadre here that been doing this work for a lot of years. He's only 23, but he's been doing this since he was 3. But for a lot of years, and you know, and he's been one of those men that have been waiting right there on that other side of the bridge to say, "Mijo, come on, let's go, let's go." You know, and even with a hug, with a teaching, with a story, a little joke, because Bobby's got that spirit too. They can make you laugh. And sometimes when you're afraid, you need somebody just to make you laugh, just to calm that spirit a little bit. And so he's been walking this road a long while and really brought a lot of teachings to a lot of people. Real proud and honored to say he's my compadre that way. And so, but a round of applause for Bobby Verdugo.
Thank you, compadre. Well, here we are, Mental Health Conference Summit. I didn't really plan or think that I would ever be speaking at a mental health conference, because I've worn many hats, just like Jerry. You know, we wear a lot of different hats, real ones and hats that are given to us for the roles that we need to play. But I am so proud to be here today, especially with, you know, people surrounded by friends, like Jerry said, and colleagues and former students and mentees and mentors. And the reason why I mention that is because we learn from one another. And I came here as a presenter this weekend, or this week, but I have taken away so much information that I've learned from other people here. I mean, don't you think it's been such a dynamic summit so far? Just all this information that we have gotten. Wow, I'm at the right place. I'm amongst the right people, and it's good to feel that way, because sometimes we wonder if we are at the right place and doing the right thing. Some of the things that I've been able to do with others is I've learned to start to become a healer. I'm going to call myself a casi healer, because casi means almost there, you know. So I'm a casi hombre noble, I'm a casi healer, a casi teacher, a casi comedian, you know. Although right now I feel like I'm at the ice house because I got that light in my face right here. But I do stand-up comedy too. And but you know, the proudest thing I guess I've done is to become a father. Those have been the teachings that I cherish the most, and I got good teaching from my father to help me along that road. But I still have a ways to go, you know. But it allowed me to do the work that I do as a social worker, which is another thing that I'm proud of, to do the work with young fathers, teen fathers specifically, but older fathers too. And I'm hearing all the things that I have seen, that we have seen in our work of that genetic memory that brings of the genetic violence that our ancestors had gone through. And the the anger and the self-hatred. I saw that in a lot of the fathers that I worked with. And where do you start? You're hired at an agency to help them become better fathers, but you got to help them with substance abuse issues. You got to help them with domestic violence issues. You got to help them with their own anger, like Ozzie said of that young man. We see a lot of those young men. I've seen a lot of those young men come into our agency asking help to be a better father. I'm going to share with you, and the thing is that sometimes you do great work. You could see the work that you did. It went well, and you can be real proud of it. And then there's fathers that didn't quite make it. That you tried real hard, but it's kind of hard to undo, 16, 17, 18 years of that trauma in a 10-week program or a 20-week program. There's no scope of work that's going to fix that. So you're happy when you're able to say, I'm so proud of my mijo right here. He's doing well. But you remember that there were some that didn't make it through the program, some that didn't make it out in the streets. They may have gotten arrested, or they may have gotten killed, or they may have killed themselves. And we've seen that. We've seen that. So I'm going to share a story real quickly about one of the toughest, not one of the toughest case that I had to deal with. This father seemingly had everything going for him. Seemed happy-go-lucky, good mood, chistoso, and had a good relationship with his significant other, and children, that he loved very much, and that they loved him. But on a summer day, for no apparent reason, he didn't go to work. He went into his closet, got out a box that he kept underneath other boxes, pulled out 2 automatic pistols, one of them a 25 millimeter, the other one a 380 Beretta, and wrote a note. And I'm pretty sure he wrote an email as well, but it was a note that he left for his family, asking their forgiveness. And he took these guns, got into his vehicle, and drove to the beach, a place where probably he had been many, many times. In fact, he drove to a parking lot near Santa Monica, just north of Santa Monica and south of Malibu, only maybe 500 yards from where he and his girlfriend many years ago had gone to their prom. And he sat there in the car, pulled out the gun. He figured the 380 would probably be the one to use, and started crying, but knew that he was going to do what he was going to do. Put the gun to his mouth, and he thought, no, that's not going to work. That's kind of ugly. That's too Hollywood. So he put it to his temple. He thought, well, maybe this would be better. Maybe might not hurt as much. But then again, he thought, who's going to find me? Who's going to find me an hour from now or 2 hours from now? What kind of a mess am I going to make? And he remembered going to his friend's house after his best friend had committed suicide with a gun, and he had to help pick up the pieces of tissue, and he goes, and he thought, I don't want anybody to find me like this. I mean, can I put a towel? No, I'm not gonna. They're not gonna destroy this vehicle because it's going to be in good shape. So somebody's going to drive it. Somebody in my family will probably end up using this vehicle. So he thought, what's the best way to do this? And no answer came to him. And he thought to himself, and the feeling was compounded with the stigma applied to suicide, and also one of those stigmas being failure. You know, that if I do it, then people are going to think I'm a coward. If I don't do it, then I'm a failure. I couldn't even do this. Well, thoughts came to him, and relations came to him, and his work came to him, and the people who he loved and who he felt would be missing him and thinking about him, and would not have any answers to why he would do something like this. It overcame that intense darkness that he was feeling. So he decided not to. He put the gun away, put it back in the box that he had it in, and through the tears and watching people, and this is a summer day, so he's watching people on the beach having fun, and he's not feeling it, but he's feeling, I need help. And he drove himself to the hospital that he always goes to, which happened to be a Kaiser hospital. But there was a Kaiser closer by. If you know where Santa Monica is, there's a Kaiser West LA, which is right off of Cadillac and La Cienega. Well, he passed that one and went to Hollywood. Because he likes Hollywood. No. Because Hollywood was a place that he was familiar with, and he drove there crying, and God knows how he made it safely, but he got there, went to the emergency room, and said, I need help. But he didn't want people to hear him, so he wrote a note on a card and handed it to the nurse or the person who was taking the intake or the appointments. It said, please, I need help. I feel like killing myself. Well, that person got alarmed and went and got this thing and took it to the nurse's station there, and then the head nurse came out, they call the duty nurse, and she looked at this father and said, are you okay? You know, and he said, I'm not deaf, I'm not dumb, I just wrote it because I didn't want people to see, you know, I didn't want people to hear me say I needed help, I was going to kill myself. So humor followed this guy everywhere anyway. When he finally got to see the doctor and the social worker and all the people, even the security people came out to make sure that he didn't have any knives on him and everything, they admitted him. He felt shame, and the shame that he felt was, I couldn't even do this. I didn't have the courage to kill myself. And the doctor wisely told him, it doesn't take courage to kill yourself, it takes courage to live. It took courage to do what you did, to come here, to ask for help. So that process didn't end there. It's a continuing process. Of course, there was a 5150 for 72 hours and years of therapy and treatment. And much of the treatment that he didn't like because it didn't fit him. It wasn't culturally relevant to him. But he went to it anyway, and to this day, he still struggles with it, but he's doing much better. And it was the hardest case that I ever worked with, because that was me. 2007, 3 days before my 57th birthday, I tried to kill myself. And I had everything going for me. There was a movie that just came out about struggles of the 1960s civil rights movement that my character is in the movie. And that was 2006 that movie came out. But it brought up a lot of memories. And some of that stuff that I saw in the dads that I work with, not necessarily just Ozzie, but many of the dads, of that post-traumatic stress disorder that they felt, not just because they were gang members, or maybe because they were returning vets, or because they lived in fear all their lives, being told that they were stupid, that they were not going to amount to much, and they weren't going to make it, and they ended up dropping out of school. And that was me. I didn't realize I was never beaten down, but I was beaten down emotionally many, many times. So there's a lot of different types of stressors out there, a lot of different types of trauma. And my message here isn't to gain sympathy from you, it's to acknowledge that we're all on this road, you know. And I learned today when I was in the Asian Pacific workshop from a young man, you know, who's years beyond his wisdom, was saying that we need to do this work, and we need to heal the suffering, not just our own, but to be able to help others with their suffering. And I have been speaking to different groups at different conferences. I'm retired now, but I've had the opportunity to speak and to share some of this story. And inevitably somebody would come up to me, thank you, because I don't have the courage to share that. And this is my story. I'm going through something similar. So I just want to leave you with that we all are on this path as healers. And I mentioned this the other night at dinner. We can't heal anyone else until we heal ourselves. And I'm still on that path. And I need your help, but I'm here to help you as well. So, gracias.
I don't see as well either. You know, in our culture, when you fall down, you know, in communities that are connected, and I remember I'd walk down the street, and if I did something wrong, somebody would come out and scold me, right? And then by the time I get home, my mom would know, before cell phones and everything. So you get it again. But in that connected culture too, you fall down, and somebody comes out. You don't need a referral. You don't need a scope of work. You don't need a funding source, right? Somebody comes out and they grab you in San Asana, colita rana, si no sana soy. You know, it's a whole rhyme that goes with that. San Asana means heal, heal. Colita rana means a frog's butt. What does that have to do with, you know? But if you really understand traditional knowledge, that even the animals have teachings for you, and the frog is a transitional animal that can go from the water to land, right? And the butt of the frog is very significant because it sits on the earth. So the teaching there is, before you transition, sit, reflect, learn the teaching. Because if you move too quickly, and we often, when we see people that are hurting, let's get you well. No, let's sit for a little bit, like the frog's butt, so we can understand the true lesson of your hurt. And then you can move. And the last part of the San Asana, si no sanas hoy, sanarás mañana. If you don't heal today, you heal tomorrow. Hope, right? And so it's real important, and we talk about in all the work we do, palabra, which means truth. Say your truth. You're sacred just the way you are with your truth. We also talk about that you can't have day without night. That all of us have day and night. All of us have the lightened part of us, but also all of us have the shadows too. So I really appreciate Brother Bobby for speaking the truth that many of us struggle with. And he talked about what we call microaggressions, right? That we don't think affect people, when people belittle you and put you down and say you're not worth anything. And many of us have experienced generations that we've seen that go on with our parents and our grandparents, and people say things or mistreat them, and it hurts us too. You know, we never process that, and then something happens, even something good happens, and we trigger. So we have, you know, attempted to build systems where no systems exist, you know, and I want to introduce a friend of mine that actually I knew back in the 70s. We worked at El Centro Mental Health together, right there on Goodrich, way long time ago. And then I didn't see Jess for a long time, and we came together. But he's really one of the leaders in advocating for culturally based community mental health. Been doing the work for a long time. He too is supposedly retired, but he's still doing the work. But through Jess, we were able to develop a system of care that was based on culture and healing and all that. So please help me welcome Mr. Jess Herrera.
When we were talking about, you know, doing the panel, I said, I'll go last. That's the easiest place, because, you know, I think I made a mistake. I don't have stories, you know, like that. You know, I have stories about and my part today is to talk about what we've done in Central Coast counties. There's 3 counties: Santa Cruz, San Benito, and Monterey. 3 counties that are similar but very different. Surf Town, USA, Santa Cruz. The hay balers in San Benito County, the salad bowl, and the aquarium in Monterey. Altogether, we're a small county compared to the counties down here. Altogether, we have about 750,000 people. Santa Cruz, 38% Latinos. San Benito, 58% Latinos. Monterey, 52% Latinos. But when we look at under 200% of poverty, or under 400% of poverty population, 85% are Latinos. When we look at services that are available, 12% are getting services. Earlier today, someone said it's a question of access. The MHSA provided and helped to open access. Well, now in Monterey, we have reports that show that the bulk of the people coming in are Latinos. But they're one and done. They come once and they don't come back. They come twice and they don't come back. When we asked about it, said, well, we provided access, it's there. They can come if they want to. But what if you go someplace and you don't feel welcomed? Or they don't understand what you're talking about. Or you don't understand what they're talking about. We see that in our counties, and it continues to be a problem. The MHSA has created a lot of money and resources for communities, but the same communities continue to be underserved, underserved, and unrepresented. When there's community planning processes, the clients and family members show up, as well as the agencies that are already serving people. But who represents the people who don't come? The people who aren't served, people who don't have access. Well, we didn't think that we could solve the problem in our county all by ourselves, so we joined up with but we were together, and we have some common needs. We have some common issues. We don't pay the highest salaries, so we always lose people to the Silicon Valley, to LA, who pays all those big salaries. Our salary structure is based on farm worker and owner. So, and it's an expensive place to live. Our psychiatrists say they can't afford to live there. If they can't afford to live there, who can't? So we all have issues of needing workforce that's reflective of the community, and services that are attractive and make sense to the community. So we found some common things. Training, we band together, and so we have trainings where staff from all the different counties, as well as service providers and people in the community, were invited to come and participate in the training. That way we could maximize effort, because if someone's not going to come to a public system, they're going to go somewhere. And so we'd rather that somewhere have some idea of what they're seeing and what they could do. So there wasn't enough workforce available, particularly bilingual, bicultural workforce. So that was another common need. We got together and created a graduate mental health program at Cal State Monterey Bay. that is focused on working with the communities of the Central Coast with a heavy focus on Latinos. Decided we wanted to do some training. 40 years ago, almost 40 years ago, Jerry and I worked in East LA, and he must have been much younger than I was, because he's still much younger than I am now. Because he's still going at it full strength. I retired 2 years ago. Wow, it's going to one thing a day is a big thing for me. And he's all over the country. He was in Washington, D.C. last week. He was in Salinas last night, Wednesday night, and he's here. But we ran into each other again about 5 or 6 years ago, and we began talking about doing some training. And we created the training and created a buzz and stir, and what happened? The county was involved. Oh, yeah, well, that's a good idea. You do it. And so we provided training, and things didn't change. It was, again, kind of one and done. So we decided that we needed to do it differently. We needed to reach out and create an inclusive community, a community that includes everybody, that's focused on Latino communities, but it includes them in the community, but it includes all those others in the community too. But we still need to focus on what we need and how to build that. So our efforts are to help people in the community who are already working with or available in the community or want to help in the community, instead of waiting 3 and 4 years for someone to graduate from a master's program. I've trained the people who are already here and seen people. Help them to learn what they have within them that nobody ever valued and nobody ever gave any honor to. Those things that we went through, those things that were suppressed in us, those things that we were told to forget about, even by some of our own people. We needed to, what we found is that in doing this training, that the people who came were not above the need. We had people crying. We had people saying, this is the first time that anything touched me, that I understand, and that I feel like a load has been taken off of my shoulders. That I remember those things. I remember these things happening. I remember my grandmother talking to me that way. I didn't know what she was talking about at the time. And people kept telling me, speak English, forget about all those other things. But it is in our language, in our families, in our relationships that we make a difference. And so what we found is that for many of the group leaders, had to create a safe place for them, a place where they could learn, where they could participate, and they could then take those things out into what they were doing. We have a curriculum that goes through a 22-week cycle, but we said you can do it with your right hand or with your left hand. And well, give us this little book, this bag of tools. We can help you create some. Here's some ideas, but it comes from you. It comes internally. Some of the most difficult challenges that we thought was that in probation that we'd have the most difficulty. We found a more receptive audience in probation than we found in behavioral health. Some of the probation officers said, I'm tired of just arresting and arresting and arresting and then sending them back to the same place because I know they're going to be back. Behavioral health staff, well, it's that, how can we build that? Medi-Cal won't allow that. As you heard earlier, Medi-Cal will pay for a lot of things. It has to do with how you write it down. But everyone's so afraid of the auditors that You can't do it. Well, you can without creating fraud, without changing the tenets of what we talk about. You can incorporate that. And so what we've seen as people start doing this is that it begins to change their life and their relationship. And they talk to us about going home and talking to their children in a different way and giving them a blessing and telling them that they're important and feeling good about that in a very different way. And so we find that the training in and of itself helps, but then we send people out into the world and doing the groups that they do, and they come back. Because if you just do the training and then send them off on their own, they're going to experience some of the things that our community is experiencing right now. And they're going to come back, I don't know that this worked. I didn't do it as good as Jerry did. He had better stories. You know, give us. Do you have a disc with your stories? You know, so and pictures and all of that, so that I can use them. And so we try to help to heal them through this process. So we have an ongoing group of healing circle, just for the group leaders, just for people who have gone through the training and who are doing the groups. On a monthly basis, we get together with them and talk with them and take them through this process. Because if you don't feel safe or if you feel isolated, you'll stop doing this work, because it is very intense. You see a lot of the things that are affecting our communities and that affected us, and that sometimes we didn't completely resolve them either. We just kind of suppressed them in order to get ahead. And so we need to do something to be of help to them. We provide additional training where, again, we do it in a healing way, helping our group leaders, because if we don't help our group leaders, they will eventually not be able to help the community that we serve. Next thing we're going to do, that we're in the process of, is we're going to go out and find the curanderos, the hierberos, the sobadores, all those people who are out there in the community that somebody goes to, because somebody goes to somebody. You know, and we're going to bring them together. And we're going to share a conversation with them and bring them into what we're doing, so that when somebody needs something, we know who to go to. Verification of, is this a good curandero? There's a sign on 101 just north of Salinas that it's a little kind of stripped out little strip. It's probably built in the 40s or something, this pole, and it has a sign, no gas here. Psychic services, curandera, call this number. Is that somebody who would pass the test of being a good person to refer to? We don't know. But what we want to do is identify people and have the community say, these are the people we trust, these are the people who we go to, these are the people who we recommend, and to help them and providing them training also. So we continue doing things to see. We also are working on developing all that stuff for evidence-based practices. But again, it has to do with how you write it down, how you document it, and how much support you as a service provider can get. These are two little kids that danced at my retirement. I was so touched by them. They were in a group that had like teens and young adults, but these two really touched my heart. Because this is what we'd like to see. Buenos educados, kids who can survive and do well in the work, can be successful in the work. That's what our parents wanted from us. That's what we should want from them. And as we talk with the group leaders, say, if you can help one person, someone in our group said, if we can help one person, that'll make a difference. But just think of that. As I tell the group leaders, if you help one person today, you change that family for generations. So just think of the trust that people have. You know, we need to create that. We need to create a safe space for them. We need to create a safe space for young people and older people. And I'm glad there's a space for older people. I wasn't sure what I was going to do after I retired. You know, so I want to thank you very much. And we need to become inclusive and bilingual and all that. So I found that. I can't pronounce half of them, but I'm trying. Thank you very much.
So in that particular community, that Tri-County, we've trained 160 different practitioners, and from probation officers to teachers to social workers to mental health workers to educators to community folks as well, and the whole aspect of having them remember the culturally based teaching. Some things that were done when you were young that you forget, basic things. You know, of acknowledgement, of blessings, of the sense of everyone has a sacred purpose. And that the question becomes when you see somebody that has a problem, consider a mental health problem, many times what's wrong with that person? Let's figure it out. Let's diagnose. Let's figure out what's going on with them. We see a parent that is angry, or a father that's abusive, or a child that's drugging or getting high. And the question is, let's do an assessment, see what's wrong with that person. From an indigenous perspective, that's the wrong question. The question is not, what's wrong with you? The question is, what happened to you? And the basic premise is that everyone started from a sacred place. And so if they're at a place where they're hurting and hurting others, what happened? What happened to you? And if it was a young man, I would say, what happened to you, Miko? If it was a mother that's struggling, what happened to you? And I was sitting with a mother and a 19-year-old young man day before yesterday, and they're having a lot of conflict, and she's upset because he's getting high and being belligerent and talking back to her and everything, and I said, and I told him, I said, you know what? I remember when I felt like that towards my mom. And my aunt pulled me aside. She says, why are you talking to your mom like that? Because, man, you know, she don't let me go no place, and she's always on me, you know. Says, you don't know what your mother's been through. What do you mean? And my aunt said something real strange. Your mother is a woman. And I didn't totally understand it right then. But what my aunt was saying is, do you realize that your mother has gone through things that women go through in life? I said, what do you mean? I know she's a woman. No, you don't understand. That your mom carries something. And my aunt went on to tell me that my mom was raped at 14. And as I was sharing this story with this young man, his mom began to cry and weep and weep and weep. I said, have you ever asked your mom why she cries? Why she hurts? And so from a cultural standpoint, from our culture, you don't probe into what's wrong with you. You say, come with me. Let me go. So, you know, I remember that teaching. And that, you know, and I think I shared earlier that you know, when sometimes I would come home and there'd be somebody in my house, and my mom said, say hi to your tia, say hi to your aunt. I'd never seen her before. Well, these are your cousins, go play with them. Okay, go play with them. And I didn't know who she was, and she stayed there for 3 or 4 days, and then she was gone. Mom, who is she? One of your aunts, you know? And some days I would come home and I'd see women with bruises here, or bruises here. Didn't say, oh, she's a victim, or no, that's your aunt. That's your relative. Because we know what trauma brings is disconnection and isolation and guilt and shame. So from a cultural standpoint, what all of us really promote is that interconnection. That come here, you're welcome. And so my mom and I'd have to give up my bed sometimes. And I said, dang, man, panzona, you gotta sleep in my bed, you eat all our cookies and stuff. And what I didn't understand is my mom was preparing me for doing this work. My mom had a 4th grade education. And our belief is that mothers, fathers, community people know how to do this healing work. They know how to welcome this way. So all of us come from a network, a National Compadres Network, that 25 years ago we came together. We came together because we saw a lot of pain in our community, especially the young people. So we're going to come together for a weekend to try and develop a strategy. And we knew how to start, and so we started, did a prayer, and then we began to share who we are. And the 3rd guy in says, man, I want to do this, but I'm hurting myself. The way my brother Bobby shared. He says, I'm going through some stuff with my kid. He says, he doesn't like me. I can't even communicate with him. He began to cry. He says, I'm all jacked up, man. How am I going to help somebody else? I'm all jacked up. And he began to cry. We all began to cry. And when we realized, us 19 men in there, before we go do work out there, we better take care of this. That the best teaching that we had was our example, you know. So 25 years now, we've been doing círculos and doing healing and community healing, and there's circles all across this country. Restorative justice did not invent circles. It's in all of our cultures. And now we're bringing those teachings to all these communities that way. And I just want to say to you that you know, in every culture we have these teachings. We have this medicine, we have this way of doing it. And so I want to thank you for showing up today. I think our time is pretty much up. They're cutting us close, and it's almost culturally incompetent to say you got to share things in a quick amount of time, you know? Because just one story, you do an intake with my mom, it's going to take you about 4 hours, man. Because she'll tell you one story, and then one story leads to another, and then she's going to ask you about you before she even gives you the information you're seeking, right? So we have to realize that we come from those kind of places and the stories. If you need more information, go to our website. We have evidence-based curriculum. We have processes that are proven by the community to work. We know how to do this. 25 years ago, we were exploring. We know how to do this stuff. We know how to do this healing work. We know how to heal communities. And it's real important for us to acknowledge that. But if people don't acknowledge you even as a people, they're not going to even go to you to seek any of your guidance. And that's that first step, is to recognize that the medicine really comes from that ground up. So once again, I want to thank Jesse, Ozzie, and Bobby. How about a round of applause for all 3 of them?